But these guys, even at 3 to 4 years, like I'm reading this article, and they're talking about how one of the guys, Huang was his name. He said that there was moments of like self-harm, and he felt moments of depression and made the wrong decision. And he was like, depression inside me has become this big. I felt afraid because I feel like if I continued on like this, I might eventually kill myself in a heated moment. I'm like, that's intense. It's time for our gaming news. In this segment, we share the best headlines from the week in the game industry. All right. So eSports is happening. Overwatch League is in its second season. Kotaku has announced that there are people in season 2 that are backing out of Overwatch League. 4 players actually have quit in the last 2 weeks.
What? Why? Why would they do that?
Because
it's not Dallas Fuel, is it?
One of them
you're
said,
right.
Johnson, one of the characters who plays for Dallas Fuel, he was a tank player turned assistant coach, Christian Coco Johnson. He said, quote, "I don't think Overwatch is really for me anymore. It's nothing about the team or our setup here. It's more about me not really enjoying the game as much as I once did. And I don't really enjoy living in Southern California, as weird as that sounds to most people." So here's what I see about this little like piece of information here. You have celebrities, or you have professional football players and stuff like that, right? You become a professional, 25, something like that, in that range. After you get out of college, you become a professional in the NFL. And then you move to wherever that team is that you're playing for.
Right.
And you get paid millions and millions of dollars to do that, right? You love the game, you love the sport, all that stuff. You're getting a workout, physical energy, et cetera, et cetera. All that stuff's really good and dandy. Video games, on the other hand, these guys are starting out in video games at like 17, 18. Between 17, or say between 16 and like 25, you're still figuring out all your shit about your life, like big time. And taken somebody and thrusting them into this world that professional football players don't experience until their late 20s, maybe even 30s, well, actually probably mid 20s or whatever. You know, they're kind of right at that edge point of they've already kind of figured out what they want to do in life or what their life goal is going to be. These kids haven't quite figured it out yet. And they're like, oh yeah, it sounds great. I'm going to get paid to play video games. And they get into the grind and they're like, this fucking sucks.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, I'm out. I don't want to do it anymore because it's lame. And then they decide, oh, they get a girlfriend or they do this or they do that. And, you know, like, again, doesn't enjoy living in Southern California. Like, that's a common thing that people have. Like, they want to live at home. They want to move around. Like, your 20s is your prime time for that. And if you don't have that ability, it kind of sucks. And I feel like you're going to see a lot of this happening with, it's going to be a major pitfall for esports growth. And the fact that you're pulling in these players that are in an age where they're so malleable and their wants and needs change so frequently, it's going to be difficult.
Yeah, the shelf life for these players and games like Overwatch is very, very short, I feel like. Overwatch going on, how long has Overwatch been out now? For like 4 years, 5 years?
2017, so 2 years.
2 years, okay. So, like, it already feels kind of old if you think about it. Like,
right.
I mean, they have a lot of new updates. They're updating it all the time. They get new characters. You know, people still enjoy this game. I don't know what the retention is, like average daily players, but, you know, most major gaming league players have a shelf life of, you know, you're young, and then at a certain point, like, you're just general aging destroys your perception and comprehension of like movements and stuff like that, and so you're just getting old, right? So it just kind of seems to me that this is probably pretty common. I feel like, I mean, you're right. I mean, being young and getting paid a shit ton of money. This is a shit ton of money for like a 25-year-old, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, for them to do that is actually pretty beneficial to just deal with the issues at hand. It's a pretty demanding career, and I understand how it might weigh on some people, especially being young. Like, you don't have the full understanding of, I don't want to be cliche and say life, but I mean, having that kind of, I mean, you put yourself through that, you know, I don't want to say pain, but like growing pains of life, doing a job that is very demanding and taxing on you mentally and maybe a little socially and stuff like that, and having to be away from family. And I mean, I don't know the whole ins and outs of what an esports team has to go through, but overall, I feel like if you put like 4 years into that, I mean, that's potentially $400,000 you're making a year by his taxes and whatever else you have to take out of that. And if you save some of that stuff, I mean, if you kind of have a game plan that I'm going to do this for this amount of time, I'm going to make this much money potentially, and then use that to spearhead yourself into a different career within gaming or esports or whatever, I mean, that's pretty awesome. But I feel like kids who just go into gaming esports it's not very, I mean, you're young, so you don't really know how to guide yourself to some degree unless you have someone in the background kind of being like, I've done it, so here's a good game plan.
And stuff like that
right.
guide you in that direction.
But I mean, are they really, again, esports is so new, are they guiding them in that direction? Or are they just coaching them to be the best team, Because the coaches, I feel like, are going to be there for a while. They aren't just going to get up and go.
Well, and like their mindset too might be that this is going to be something that they're going to have a 10-year career with, but really it's more like a 3 or 4 year career,
right?
As you were saying. So, but these guys, even at 3 to 4 years, like I'm reading this article, and they're talking about how one of the guys, Huang was his name. He said that there was moments of like self-harm, and he felt moments of depression and made the wrong decision. And he was like, depression inside me has become this big. I felt afraid because I feel like if I continued on like this, I might eventually kill myself in a heated moment. Like, that's intense. And I think they're playing 8-10 hours a day probably practicing this game, and you're stationary. So like, not only are you, at least with traditional sports, when you're playing, you're doing physical activity, which kind of gets your blood flowing, and like it can have health benefits. It also can have health negatives because the fact if you get hit really hard, you're like gonna break bones or what have you.
Concussion,
but you're moving,
like that,
like you're moving around. And when you're sitting there stationary at this computer playing this game, your mind's racing a lot, analyzing what you're doing.
You're probably having a lot of Red Bull.
Not moving. You're probably having a lot of Red Bull. You're
a lot
not
of
being
sugar.
Healthy. Like there's all these things that like that you're not doing that are good for your health.
I mean, just recently, we got back from South by, and I was like, I got to get a shit ton of videos out.
Yeah.
So I was sitting down for 3 hours at a time, and the only time I'd get up was go to the restroom.
Yeah.
And I felt it on my body. I was like,
did you have a shit bucket?
Did not have a shit bucket. I just went to my own shit buckets in the restroom. And like, I felt the negative effects on my body. Like, you feel weird. You feel a little anxious. Like, you need to get up and move around. But at the same time, you're like, shit, I got to sit down and like crank some stuff out or I'm going to get behind, And so having that effect on this is, I understand how they must feel having to do this in and out. When you're a kid, it's not that big of a deal to not move around. I feel like it's just,
right.
Those, you don't feel those effects. But being a little older, I think you those things start to weigh on you a lot quicker and sooner, and you can really pick up on like how you're feeling. But because esports is so new, at the same time, I feel like we don't have any standards of like, hey, the NFL and NBA and all that, they have standards like people got to have time off and people got to get paid so much and people need this and people need that, because just quality of life, things have been worked into these contracts that are being laid out on the daily or whatever, or yearly. And so for esports, it'd be nice if they'd be like, hey, you can only play this much time during the day, as like training time. The other time you need to be working out or moving or doing that stuff on your own time, to kind of balance life out. But again, it's such a short-lived career for these guys. I feel like there's no point in really having that right now. And as esports grows bigger and bigger, I hope we get some standards like that, because people do need to move around. It is a health issue.
I think it would be good to do, because you could expand that career for them if you take measures early like this. You could take what is normally a 2 to 3 year career for somebody and make it a 6, 7, 10 year career, because if they're healthy and they're not stressed out and like working themselves to death, like they could keep their mind strong to be able to be in this for a longer period of time. They did say like after the end of season 2 and then leading into season 3, they want to work on, this is the Overwatch League, wants to work on introducing a reduced number of games for each team throughout the season. Teams also discuss measures of their own, such as more efficient practice schedules and bringing on sports psychologists. So, hopefully they figure out the best ways to approach this problem and
on the right track.
Help these kids from getting over. Mental health issues are a big issue that I feel like not enough people understand fully and take for granted. It's like, oh, you're just bummed out or whatever, but like this stuff weighs on you, and over a period of time, like it just keeps piling up and up and up to the point where you could have a breaking point and like not be in a good place. So,
I mean, it's a classic example of it's the best of times, it's the worst of times.
Yeah.
I mean, who would have thought, a teenager up to a young adult can make this much money in 1 year just from sitting down and playing a game.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it is detrimental to their health, depending on how they're going about it. So